Hello, you are watching the Eclipse channel. Enjoy. Chapter 2, The Star Hunter. In the previous chapter, you followed the crew of the Eclipse spaceship, led by the brave Commander Kai, as they responded to a mysterious distress signal from an abandoned space station. Isla, the brilliant and tireless scientist, uncovered ancient clues, while Xiron, the enigmatic telepath with silver eyes, sensed a dark presence lurking around every corridor. When an unknown entity emerged from the shadows, the team realized that the danger was much greater than they had imagined. A conscious and ravenous force was watching them intently, turning exploration into a survival game. Now, the mission takes them to a planet covered in resonant crystals emitting disturbing sounds. Will Kai and his team manage to face the new challenges hidden among the shimmering reflections and enigmatic sounds? Get ready to discover what awaits them in Chapter 2, The Star Hunter. Kai, the commander of the Eclipse spaceship, is a natural leader with a steady gaze and unwavering determination. His courage in critical situations inspires confidence in his allies and intimidates any threat that dares to challenge them. Isla, the brilliant scientist, combines sharp intelligence with fearless curiosity, solving puzzles that challenge human understanding. With her quick mind and ability to connect seemingly unrelated clues, she is an essential part of the team. Xiron, the enigmatic alien with silver eyes and telepathic abilities, has a calmness that hides vast power. He is the team's mental shield, protecting them from invisible threats and psychic influences. In this chapter, there are no new members, but the tension and challenges ahead promise to test each of these characters beyond their usual limits, uniting their abilities in a dance of survival amidst sound illusions and unexpected dangers. The Eclipse spaceship floated majestically above a planet that glowed like an ocean of gems, reflecting lights in shades of blue, purple, and silver. The trio observed the landscape through the large window of the command bridge. Kai, with a serious expression and eyes fixed on the spectacle below, listened to Isla's report as she reviewed the energy readings. This planet emits an unusual sound frequency, Kai, Isla said, a gleam of fascination in her eyes. There's something here worth investigating. It's as if the surface itself is singing. Xiron, who had maintained a calm expression until then, frowned. His silver eyes reflected the crystal's light as he murmured, "These vibrations carry intent. It's not just sound. It's like a whisper, a warning." Their reason for descending to the planet wasn't only Isla's scientific curiosity, but a sequence of unexplained events that had led them there. Ever since they'd escaped the dark entity at the abandoned station, the crew felt like something was watching them, guiding their steps. Encrypted messages in old records, energy anomalies, and a persistent feeling that destiny was pushing them toward a culminating point. The planet of shimmering crystals seemed to be the next piece of the puzzle that promised answers, or new threats. Kai made the decision to land, though not without a final warning glance at his companions. Stay alert. Anything unusual, report immediately. As they disembarked from the ship, they were greeted by a dazzling yet unsettling landscape. The crystalline ground emitted musical notes with every step, creating an ethereal sound that filled the air. However, the beauty soon turned into apprehension. Isla began recording the frequencies, while Xiron closed his eyes, focusing on his perceptions. Suddenly, a deep rumble shattered the harmony of the notes, reverberating through the ground like a distant roar. Before they could react, nearby crystals lit up, emitting a buzz that penetrated their minds. Kai felt the air vibrate around him. A colossal shadow formed, standing out against the shimmering sea. It was an alien creature with sharp limbs that seemed made of the same crystal and glowing eyes pulsing in a hypnotic rhythm. "Watch out!" Isla shouted, her voice swallowed by dissonant echoes that seemed to mock her. Kai drew his plasma blade, his muscles tense as he faced the creature's gaze. Xiron, sweating and tense, whispered, "This isn't just an attack, it's a test. They want to see how we react." The music of the crystals intensified, creating illusions that danced at the corners of their eyes, distorted reflections, images blending reality and fantasy. Isla realized that the key lay in the sound patterns. If she could decipher them, she might find a weakness. But time was running out, and the creature advanced with movements as quick as light reflected on its blades. The conflict had begun, and survival depended not only on Kai's strength, but also on Isla's sharp mind and Zyron's psychic power. Kai advanced determinedly, the plasma blade emitting a bluish glow reflecting off the surrounding crystal's facets. The alien creature, which looked like a fusion of crystal and flesh, moved at an alarming speed, each strike of its sharp limbs tearing through the air with a shrill sound. Isla, kneeling on a crystal formation, frantically adjusted her analysis equipment, searching for patterns in the notes resonating around them. "These sounds, they're like a code," she shouted, trying to be heard over the buzzing that pulsed around, filling the air with an oppressive sensation. Zyron kept his eyes closed, his forehead marked by veins pulsing as his mind struggled to maintain the psychic barrier, shielding the team from illusions. The spectral figures appearing at the edges of his vision became increasingly real, whispering twisted truths and visions of fear. The telepath knew that if his concentration faltered, they'd all be swept into a frenzy of hallucinations, leaving them defenseless. "Hold on, Kai," Zyron exclaimed, his voice trembling as the mental pressure on him grew like a storm. Kai dodged an attack that could have split him in half, his heart pounding like a war drum. He felt sweat trickling down his face as every movement of the creature made the ground vibrate, and new echoes emerged, further confusing his senses. He knew he had to buy time for Isla to find a solution that could turn the situation around. "Isla, we need an escape now," he shouted, forcing his voice out amid the piercing sound that filled his ears. The scientist looked at the matrix of crystals, her eyes scanning the energy lines that formed and dissolved like a living puzzle. Suddenly, realization struck her like lightning. It's a resonance game. If we can alter the pattern, we can destabilize the creature. Isla quickly adjusted the parameters on her device, her fingers moving with nervous precision. But before she could finish, one of the creature's crystalline arms struck in her direction. Kai lunged in a desperate move, blocking the attack with his blade and feeling the impact reverberate through his bones. He held firm, but the pain was intense. Zyron, sensing the imminent danger, channeled one last wave of psychic energy, pushing the creature back for a brief moment. The effort made his legs tremble, but it gave Isla the time she needed. She activated the device, and an opposing sound wave echoed through the crystalline valley. The monster stopped, its eyes blinking in a confused sequence. The notes around them changed from a terrifying cacophony to a soft and resonant harmony. The creature twisted, its crystalline forms losing consistency until they fragmented into millions of pieces, falling like a shower of sparkling stars. The ensuing silence was absolute, broken only by Kai's labored breathing and Zyron's faint whispers. "We did it, but this was only the beginning." As tension eased, before they could recover, Isla pointed to an inscription revealed by the fallen fragments. An ancient message carved in a lost language. "You are being watched." The inscription engraved on the crystal reflected a sinister glow under the planet's flickering light. "You're being watched." Those words reverberated in Kai's mind, echoing like a foreboding warning. Isla, wide-eyed, murmured, "Who or what is watching us?" Before anyone could answer, a new wave of energy vibrated through the air, more intense and threatening. The crystals around began to pulse, emitting a deep and resonant sound. Zyron, feeling the increasing psychic pressure, staggered backward, sweat dripping as he fought to maintain mental control over the environment. "Something is coming," whispered the telepath, his silver eyes reflecting a worried gleam. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to crack with glowing fissures. A massive creature, emerging from the planet's very core, rose with a guttural roar that made the crystals around tremble and the Eclipse spaceship sway in the distance like a leaf in the wind. It was larger and more menacing than anything they had ever faced, with limbs covered in crystalline fragments vibrating in a hypnotic rhythm, echoing the planet's energy. Kai advanced without hesitation, his gaze resolute. Every strike he made was mirrored by an invisible barrier that the creature summoned effortlessly. Isla's attacks, now converted into sound commands on her portable device, were ineffective, absorbed by the creature's overwhelming rhythm. She frowned, desperate to adjust to the right frequency. Zyron knelt, feeling the creature's mind intertwine with his, draining his energy and strength. He knew he couldn't hold on much longer. In a flash of insight, he realized something. Isla, the sound, it's layered. We need a double frequency, an overlaid tone. Isla understood immediately, her fingers moving quickly over the device. The new sound reverberated through the environment, a complex melody opposing the creature's vibrations. The crystalline beast hesitated, its defenses beginning to falter. Kai seized the opportunity, charging forward with a battle cry and plunging the plasma blade into one of the creature's weakest joints. A metallic crack echoed as a fracture formed in its body. The creature roared, this time in pain, but before retreating, it launched a desperate, final attack, a piercing scream that cut through the air and struck everyone's mind like lightning. Kai felt his vision blur. Isla screamed in pain, and Zyron, exhausted, trembled. But in that moment, Kai's final courage showed. With ears bleeding and senses failing, he drove the blade even deeper until a bright explosion illuminated the valley. When the light faded, the creature began to disintegrate, breaking into thousands of crystal fragments that fell like glittering snow. An eerie, heavy silence settled over the place. Isla fell to her knees, breathless, while Zyron slowly opened his eyes, relief and exhaustion marking his face. But the relief was short-lived. From the inscription, now glowing, a new message appeared. You have awakened something that should not be touched. The air was tense as the crew caught their breath, surrounded by crystals still flickering, as if echoing recent events. Kai stood up, his armor covered in shimmering fragments, breathing heavily. Isla, her face marked with fatigue, stared at the inscription, now glowing with a threatening light. "This isn't over," she whispered, her voice wavering between exhaustion and dread. Suddenly, tremors ran through the ground, making the crystals tremble in a strange and hypnotic rhythm. Zyron, his silver eyes gleaming in alertness, abruptly raised his head. Something is emerging, and it's not of this world. A gigantic crack opened beneath their feet, splitting the valley in two. From the abyss, a pulsating glow emanated, filling the air with an almost unbearable buzz. Isla grabbed Kai's arm, eyes fixed on the chasm. "We need to get out of here now." But before they could react, a figure began to emerge from the depths. It was not a monstrous creature as before, but a slender, almost ethereal being made of shimmering liquid light, changing color and shape. Its eyes, pupil-less, projected an intensity that pierced the soul. Zyron shuddered, feeling the psychic presence of this new being, which was far more powerful than anything they had encountered. "You have broken the cycle," the voice echoed in all their minds, cold and emotionless. Now the Guardian awakens. Kai, senses on high alert, positioned himself in front of Isla and Zyron, trying to stay calm. But before he could say anything, the figure stepped forward and extended a translucent arm. Time seemed to freeze around them for a moment, and a wave of images flooded each of their minds. They saw ancient civilizations, far more advanced than anything they knew, destroyed in an instant by the same Guardian now observing them. Isla's eyes widened as understanding hit her like lightning. This planet is a seal, a prison, and we broke it. Zyron struggled to keep his sanity under the overwhelming weight of the presence. "Kai, if we don't leave now, we won't get another chance." His voice was a mix of urgency and despair. Kai nodded, but the Guardian had already made his decision. He raised his arms, and the buzz transformed into a deafening roar. The sky filled with dancing lights, like auroras intertwining, and an invisible force began pushing them back. "Now!" shouted Kai, grabbing Isla and Zyron. They ran toward the Eclipse, which was already trembling from the force emanating from the valley. As the spaceship took off in haste, the The planet behind them began to fragment into large pieces floating into space, like a star finally freed from its chains. Isla, still panting, looked out the window and whispered, "What else did we awaken by breaking this seal?" Silence was the only response as the collapsing planet's glow reflected on the crew's faces, each aware that the consequences were still to come. The Eclipse traversed the void of space, leaving behind a planet disintegrating in a cosmic dance of crystals and light. The crew watched in solemn silence, knowing they had altered the balance of something ancient and terrifying. The pulsating glow of the collapsing Guardian reflected in the eyes of Kai, Isla, and Xiron, as if the image was imprinted on their souls. "We made it out, but at what cost?" murmured Isla, her mind still haunted by the visions of destruction they had shared. Xiron closed his eyes, the telepathic connection still echoing with the incomprehensible power they had felt. "That was only a warning. There are forces that should never be awakened." His voice carried a weight that silenced any immediate response. Kai rose from the command chair, looking at his companions, his gaze steady but his determination mixed with concern. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. This was only one of the secrets buried among the stars. If someone or something is watching us, we'll find out. And when we do, we'll be ready." Suddenly, the ship's communication, which had been silent since the forced landing, emitted a crackling noise. A transmission from an unknown origin intercepted the frequency, and a deep voice, laced with static and mystery, echoed throughout the cabin. "You have touched the first piece of the game. Prepare yourselves, Star Hunters, for the board extends far beyond your vision." Kai exchanged a serious look with Isla and Xiron. The scientist, heart racing, quickly typed commands into the console, trying to trace the message's origin. The coordinates that appeared on the screen were not from a fixed point. They floated as if navigating through the very fabric of space. "It's an invitation," Isla whispered, almost in disbelief. "And a threat." Xiron opened his eyes, a determined glint reflecting in his silver gaze. "Whatever it is, we're no longer just exploring. We're being tested." Kai clenched his fists, his face marked by the shadow of a determined smile. "Then let the test begin. Let's show whoever is watching that we're more than just explorers. We're survivors." With a final command, the spaceship accelerated, its engines slicing through the void like a luminous blade. In the distance, a new light appeared, an unusual star pulsing with an energy that seemed to call to them. Isla looked at it, and for the first time in a long while felt both fear and hope. The Eclipse followed its path, no longer just a ship drifting on routine missions, but a symbol of resilience, ready to face whatever mysteries emerged from the stellar depths. The universe was no longer just a sea of possibilities. It was a battlefield where only the strongest and the cleverest could prevail. Silence returned, but this time, laden with the promise of grander adventures and secrets that would challenge even the brightest minds. The game had begun, and the crew of the Eclipse would not back down. Hey, before we wrap up, don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss our next adventures. Together, we grow and go even further. See you in the next chapter of this journey. Stick with us, where the adventure never stops.